Hey everyone, welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're diving into something I know a lot of you are thinking about, and honestly, who isn't these days? It's the whole digital screen time thing, specifically when it comes to those 10 to 12-year-olds.
It's everywhere, right? It's kind of unavoidable.
Yeah, exactly. And, you sent over some really interesting articles and research on this, so what we want to do today is really pull out the most important stuff. The stuff you need to know as parents, as caregivers, as anyone who's interacting with kids in this age range.
Right. Sort of cut through the noise a bit.
Exactly, because there's so much information out there.
Yeah.
So to get started, can you give us a sense of just how pervasive screens are in the lives of these kids? I mean, we all see it, but do we actually know the numbers?
Well, the research is pretty eye-opening. I mean, when you look at preteens, so think like 8 to 12-year-olds,
Yeah,
they're spending an average of something like 5.5 hours a day on screens.
5.5 hours.
Yep. And that's across all those interactive devices, right?
Yeah.
Phones, tablets, laptops.
Okay, so it's not just TV time anymore.
No, not at all. It's this much more kind of, engaging, interactive digital world that they're immersed in.
Right, right. And that's a huge chunk of their waking hours. I mean, that's more than some adults spend at work.
It is. It's really significant.
So our mission today then is to go beyond just the numbers and really understand the effects, both good and bad, of all this screen time, right?
Absolutely. I think we need to acknowledge that there can be positives,
Mm.
educational apps, staying connected with friends.
Right.
But I think what we really want to focus on are those potential downsides. What happens when it's too much? What are the consequences of excessive screen time during this, really critical developmental period?
Right, because these aren't just mini adults.
Exactly.
Their brains are still developing, their bodies are changing.
Totally. I mean, think about it. Ages 10 to 12, you've got this like whirlwind of physical changes happening, right? Growth spurts, puberty. Cognitively, they're like making these huge leaps in terms of their thinking abilities, problem solving, and socially and emotionally, they're, trying to figure out who they are, where they fit in. It's a lot.
Oh, it is. And so when you layer on all this screen time, it's kind of like adding another layer of complexity to an already complex phase of life.
Exactly. And it's during this window that the impact of screen time can be particularly profound, for better or worse.
Okay, so let's dive into the specifics. When we talk about effects, what are we actually talking about? Let's start with the physical side. What are some of the immediate ways that all this screen time can affect kids' bodies?
Well, let's start with something we can all relate to. Sleep.
Sleep, yes. Essential.
Absolutely essential. And the research is pretty clear on this. The blue light emitted from these digital screens can really disrupt a child's natural sleep cycle.
Okay, and how does that actually work?
So it basically boils down to melatonin,
Melatonin, yeah.
that hormone that tells our bodies it's time to wind down.
Right.
Well, blue light suppresses melatonin production.
Oh, interesting. So even if they're like in their bed getting ready for sleep, if that screen's on?
It's like their brain's getting this message that it's still daytime.
Makes sense.
And on top of that, you have to think about the content itself.
Right.
I mean, you're often talking about fast-paced games, videos that really grab their attention, social media feeds that are constantly updating.
So their minds are still racing even after they turn the devices off.
Exactly. It can take a while for their brains to actually calm down and
Yeah.
get into that sleep mode.
I see. So what are the real-world consequences of that? What happens when kids don't get enough sleep? I feel like we all know, but
Right. Well, first and foremost, you get irregular sleep patterns. They might have trouble falling asleep. They might wake up during the night. And overall, they're just not getting enough sleep, especially if they're using screens right before bed.
okay.
And that leads to daytime fatigue,
Oh.
which then affects their ability to focus in school. And of
Yeah.
course, it can make them moodier, more irritable, those classic signs of sleep deprivation.
Right. The grumpy, tired kid. We've all seen it. Okay, so sleep is a big one. What else? What are some other physical effects we should be thinking about?
Well, this one might seem a little less obvious, but it's really common. Digital eye strain.
Oh, yeah. I was just thinking about that. I mean, I feel it myself sometimes just from, working on my computer.
Exactly. And for kids who are often holding these devices even closer to their faces,
Right.
it can be even more pronounced.
So what are the symptoms of digital eye strain? What should parents be looking out for?
Well, you might see them complaining of dry eyes, blurry vision, headaches,
Okay.
and it really comes down to that constant close-up focus that these devices require.
Right.
Their eye muscles are just working overtime to maintain that focus, and that can lead to fatigue and discomfort.
Got it. And then, of course, there's the posture issue.
Oh, yeah. The hunch. Sure.
The hunch. It's like a universal sign of the digital age.
It really is. And, it's not just an aesthetic thing. It can actually lead to some real problems.
Explain that.
Well, when kids are constantly slouched or hunched over their devices, it puts a lot of strain on their neck and upper back muscles.
Right.
And that can lead to pain, discomfort,
Okay.
and over time, it can even contribute to more serious issues down the line.
We'll get into those long-term effects in a bit.
So it's good.
But before we move on, I think it's important to mention one more immediate consequence of screen time: reduced physical activity.
Absolutely. It's kind of a no-brainer, right?
Right.
If they're sitting on the couch with a tablet, they're not running around outside.
Exactly. Every minute spent on a screen is a minute they're not getting that physical activity that's so important for their health and development.
Right. And they can have immediate effects on their energy levels, their mood.
And their overall well-being.
Exactly.
Okay, so those are some of the immediate physical effects. Now, let's talk about the long-term consequences. What happens when these habits continue over time? What are we seeing in the research?
Well, this is where things can get a bit more concerning. One of the most well-established long-term effects is an increased risk of childhood obesity.
Obesity.
And the research is pretty consistent here. Kids who spend 2 or more hours a day on screens are more likely to be overweight or obese than kids who spend less time.
And I imagine that risk just keeps going up the more time they spend on screens.
Exactly. It's like a dose-dependent relationship.
Okay. And is it just the lack of physical activity that's driving that, or are there other factors involved?
Well, inactivity is definitely a big part of it, but it's not the whole story. There's also the snacking factor.
Ah, yeah. The mindless snacking while watching TV or playing games. I've definitely been guilty of that myself.
It's easy to do, but for kids, it can be especially problematic because they're not always as aware of their hunger cues. They might just keep snacking because the food is there. And then you have to consider the types of foods that are often advertised to kids.
Right.
It's a lot of sugary drinks, processed snacks, fast food.
Not exactly the healthiest options?
No. And there's even research suggesting that having screens in the bedroom can increase the risk of obesity even more.
Really? Why is that?
It's not entirely clear, but it could be related to sleep disruptions, late-night snacking.
Okay, interesting. So obesity is a major concern. What about other long-term physical consequences?
We also need to think about those posture problems we talked about earlier.
Right, the hunching.
Exactly. If kids are constantly in those bad postures, it can lead to chronic musculoskeletal problems.
So we're talking about things like back pain, neck pain.
Yes, but potentially even more serious issues. Because their bodies are still growing, this kind of sustained stress on their musculoskeletal system can have long-term consequences. There's some research suggesting a possible link to early onset arthritis, for example.
Wow. And there's also the concern about scoliosis, right?
Yes, there's some emerging research looking at a possible connection between prolonged screen time and an increased risk of adolescent idiopathic scoliosis, which is a curvature of the spine. More research is needed to confirm this link, but it's something to be aware of.
Okay. And I know there's also been a lot of discussion around the impact of screen time on eyesight.
Absolutely. Myopia, or nearsightedness, is a growing concern.
Right.
And there's increasing evidence suggesting that spending more time on screens, especially up close, can contribute to the development or worsening of myopia in children.
Yeah, okay.
It's thought to be related to the strain that this close-up focusing puts on the eye muscles. And interestingly, spending time outdoors has actually been shown to have a protective effect against myopia.
Interesting. So kids who are spending more time indoors on screens might be missing out on that protective benefit of outdoor time.
Exactly.
All right. So we've covered a lot of ground on the physical effects of screen time, both short-term and long-term. Now, let's shift gears and talk about the mental and emotional impacts. What are some of the immediate effects that parents might notice in their kids?
One of the most noticeable is a reduced attention span.
Ah, yeah. I've definitely heard a lot of parents and teachers talking about that.
It's a common concern.
Mm-hmm.
And it really makes sense when you think about how digital media is designed. It's all about instant gratification, constant stimulation.
Right. It's fast-paced. It's designed to keep you engaged.
Exactly. And that can make it harder for kids to focus on tasks that require more sustained attention, like reading, doing homework.
Because those things aren't as stimulating.
Right. They might seem boring in comparison. And it's not just about the time spent actively using screens. Even having a screen on in the background, like a TV show playing, can be distracting.
It's like background noise, but for their visual attention.
Exactly. And this can actually interfere with their cognitive development, especially in those early years when their brains are still forming those critical connections.
So it's not just about, finishing their homework or paying attention in class. It's about how their brains are actually developing.
Right. It's about those foundational skills that they'll need for learning and thinking throughout their lives.
Okay. And I know we've also talked about the impact of screen time on mood and behavior.
Yes, absolutely. You often see increased irritability and mood swings in kids who are spending a lot of time on screens.
And why is that? Is it just because they're not getting enough sleep, or is there something else going on?
Well, sleep definitely plays a role,
Hmm.
but there's also the factor of sensory overload.
Sensory overload.
Think about all the bright lights, the rapid visual changes, the loud sounds.
That's a lot of stimulation.
It is.
Yeah.
And for some kids, it can be really overwhelming.
Yeah.
It can make them feel agitated, restless, even anxious. And then there's the dopamine factor.
Dopamine, the feel-good chemical.
Exactly. When kids engage with screens, especially things like games and social media, it triggers the release of dopamine in their brains.
Which makes them feel good.
Right. But then when they stop using screens, there can be a dip in dopamine levels.
Oh.
And that can lead to feelings of dissatisfaction, irritability, even withdrawal-like symptoms in some cases.
So it's like a bit of a roller coaster. They get that high from the dopamine, and then they crash when they come off the screens.
That's a good way to put it. And that can definitely contribute to those mood swings and irritability.
Okay, that makes sense. Now let's talk about the long-term mental and emotional effects of excessive screen time. What are some of the more serious concerns that have been raised?
Well, one of the biggest concerns is an increased risk of anxiety and depression.
Anxiety and depression. Okay.
And there's a growing body of research that's showing a link between increased screen time, particularly during those preteen years, and a higher likelihood of experiencing these mental health challenges later on.
So it's not just that kids are feeling stressed or anxious in the moment, but it's actually affecting their long-term mental health.
Right. And there are a number of factors that are thought to contribute to this. One is the reduced time spent in face-to-face social interaction.
Right, because if they're spending more time online, they're spending less time interacting with people in person.
Exactly. And those real-world interactions are so important for developing social skills, empathy, and a sense of connection.
Right, and we know that those things are protective factors against mental health problems.
Exactly. And then there's the physical activity piece. We know that exercise is a great mood booster and stress reliever.
Right,
And of course, sleep is also crucial for mental health.
right. And we've already talked about how screen time can disrupt sleep, so it's like this negative cycle.
Exactly. And it's interesting because some studies have also found that very low levels of screen time can be associated with poorer mental health as well.
Oh, really? That's surprising.
It is, and it really highlights the importance of balance.
Right. It's not about eliminating screens altogether, but about finding that sweet spot where they're using technology in a healthy and productive way.
Exactly.
Okay, so anxiety and depression are major concerns. What else? What are some other long-term mental effects we should be thinking about?
Another big one is impaired social skills.
Oh, right. We touched on that a bit earlier.
Yes, but it's worth emphasizing because it can have such a significant impact on their lives. If kids aren't getting enough opportunities to practice those real-world social skills, they can struggle in social situations.
They might feel awkward, unsure of how to interact.
Exactly. And there's a concept called the video deficit effect, which basically says that young children especially learn less effectively from screens than they do from real-life interactions.
Interesting.
And it makes sense, right? Because in real life, there's so much more nuance. There are facial expressions, body language, tone of voice, all those things that convey meaning and emotion.
Right. You don't get that same richness of interaction through a screen.
Right.
Okay, so social skills are definitely something to be mindful of.
Yeah.
And then there's the impact on academics, right?
Yes, definitely. Studies have shown a pretty consistent link between excessive screen time and lower academic performance.
Lower grades, less engagement in school.
Exactly. And again, there are multiple factors at play here. Sleep deprivation can affect their cognitive function, making it harder to learn and focus. Their attention spans might be shorter, making it harder to sit through a lesson or complete a long assignment. And then there's just the simple fact that time spent on screens is time that's not being spent on studying, reading, or other academic pursuits.
Right.
And that can add up over time.
It makes sense. And we know that having screens in the bedroom can also negatively impact academic performance.
Yes, that's another factor to consider.
Okay. And finally, let's talk about something that's really relevant to this age group: body image and self-esteem,
Yes, this is a huge one.
especially with the rise of social media.
Absolutely. Social media can be a really tough environment for kids, especially in that pre-teen and teenage range. They're bombarded with images of, seemingly perfect bodies, perfect lives.
Right, and they're constantly comparing themselves to others.
Exactly. And it's really hard to develop a healthy self-image when you're constantly being exposed to these unrealistic ideals.
And I imagine it can really fuel that fear of missing out.
Oh, absolutely. FOMO is huge.
And that can lead to anxiety, depression.
Exactly. And it's not just about social media. Even in games and other online spaces, there's often this emphasis on achievement, competition.
Right. And that can really take a toll on kids' self-esteem if they're not feeling like they measure up.
Exactly. And when you combine all of this with the potential for sleep deprivation and the increased risk of obesity that we talked about earlier, it can create this perfect storm for negative self-perception and low self-esteem.
So it's all interconnected.
It really is.
Okay, so we've painted a pretty stark picture here of the potential downsides of screen time. And I know that can be overwhelming for parents. So let's talk solutions. What can we actually do about all of this?
Well, the good news is that there are a lot of things parents can do to mitigate these risks and help their kids develop a healthy relationship with technology. And one of the most important things is to simply be aware of the potential downsides. I mean, we've covered a lot of ground
We
today,
have.
but even just having this awareness can make a big difference because then you can start to make more informed choices about how your family uses technology.
Right, so knowledge is power.
Exactly.
Okay, so awareness is the first step. What are some other practical strategies that parents can implement?
Well, one of the most basic, but also one of the most effective is setting limits.
Limits. Oh,
This
yeah.
is where it can be helpful to think about that DERS-dependent relationship we talked about earlier. The more screen time kids have, the greater the risks. So setting some clear boundaries around how much time they can spend on screens each day can make a big difference.
Okay. And are there any specific guidelines for how much screen time is appropriate? I know the American Academy of Pediatrics has recommendations.
They do.
Hmm.
And they generally recommend limiting recreational screen time to 1 to 2 hours per day for kids ages 5 and older.
1 to 2 hours. Okay.
And it's important to note that that's specifically for recreational screen time. It doesn't include things like schoolwork or homework that might require using a computer or tablet.
Right. It's about that leisure time.
Exactly.
And are there any other expert recommendations that we should be aware of?
The World Health Organization also has guidelines, and they generally recommend limiting sedentary screen time as well, especially for younger children.
Okay. And I'm guessing these are just guidelines, not hard and fast rules.
Right, exactly. It's about finding what works for your family and your child's individual needs.
Right.
But it can be helpful to have those expert recommendations as a starting point.
Definitely. So we've got limits on the amount of time. Are there other types of limits that parents can set?
Absolutely. Think about types of content.
Okay.
For example, you might decide that certain types of games or videos are off limits. Or you might limit social media use, especially for younger kids.
Right, because that can be a whole other can of worms.
It can. And it's also important to think about when and where screens are being used.
Okay.
So, for example, you might create some tech-free zones in your house, like no screens at the dinner table
Makes sense.
or no screens in the bedroom. That's a big one.
Oh, yeah. I've heard that one a lot. Why is it so important to keep screens out of the bedroom?
Well, for one thing, it can really interfere with sleep. We talked about the blue light and how it can suppress melatonin production.
Right.
But it's also about creating a space for rest and relaxation. The bedroom should be a sanctuary from all the stimulation of the digital world.
I like that, a tech-free sanctuary.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got limits on time, content, location. What about specific strategies for, like, actually getting kids off the screens?
Well, one of the most effective things you can do is provide alternatives.
Alternatives, okay?
And I don't mean like just telling them to go read a book.
Right.
It's about making those alternatives just as appealing, if not more appealing, than the screens.
Okay, so give us some examples. What are some fun and engaging activities that can compete with the allure of the digital world?
Well, first and foremost, get them outside.
Outside, yes. Fresh air, sunshine.
Exactly. And there are so many options. Organized sports, if they're into that,
Right.
or just free play at the park, bike rides, nature walks, anything that gets them moving and engaged with the real world.
Love it. And what about for those days when it's raining or too cold to be outside?
Well, there's always creative play.
Creative play, okay.
Things like arts and crafts, building forts, playing board games.
Right, those classic activities that have entertained kids for generations.
Exactly. And they're still just as fun and engaging as ever.
And they're great for developing imagination or problem-solving skills.
Totally. And another thing that can be really helpful is involving kids in household chores and cooking.
Oh, interesting.
It might not sound like the most exciting alternative to video games, but it can actually be really rewarding for kids.
How so?
Well, it gives them a sense of responsibility, of being a contributing member of the family,
Right.
and it can be a great way to bond and connect.
Makes sense. And they're learning valuable life skills.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got outdoor play, creative play, chores. Any other tips for distracting kids from screens?
Well, something that can be really powerful is role modeling.
Role modeling, okay.
Kids are always watching what we do.
Oh, they are. They're like little sponges.
Exactly. So if they see us constantly on our phones, on our laptops, they're going to pick up on that. But if they see us putting our devices away and engaging in other activities, they're more likely to do the same.
Right. It's that do as I do, not as I say thing.
Exactly. And it's not about being perfect. I mean, we all use screens, and that's okay.
Right.
But it's about being mindful of our own screen time and making sure that we're setting a good example for our kids.
I think that's so important. And it's not just about how much time we're spending on screens, but also how we're using them.
Absolutely.
Are we being mindful? Are we present in the moment? Or are we just scrolling and tapping mindlessly?
That's a great point. And another thing that can be really helpful is co-viewing.
Co-viewing.
So that's where you actually watch TV shows or videos together as a family.
Okay.
And then you talk about what you're watching.
Oh, I see. So it's not just passive viewing.
Right. It's about engaging with the content and making it a shared experience.
And that can lead to some great conversations.
It can. And it can also help kids develop critical thinking skills and media literacy.
That's a great point.
And it can be a fun way to connect as a family.
Love it. Okay, so we've got role modeling, co-viewing. Any other advice for parents who are feeling overwhelmed by this whole digital dilemma?
Well, one thing that can be really helpful is to remember that it's a journey, not a destination.
A journey, okay.
There's no magic formula. It's about trying different strategies, seeing what works for your family, and adjusting as needed.
Right, it's about being flexible and adaptable.
Exactly. And it's also about having open communication with your kids.
Oh, yeah, communication is key.
It really is. Talk to them about the potential risks of screen time,
Yeah.
but also about the benefits.
Right.
Help them understand why you're setting certain limits.
Yeah.
And involve them in the process of creating those limits.
So it's a collaborative effort.
Exactly. And that can make a big difference in terms of buy-in and compliance.
Right, because kids are more likely to follow rules that they've had a hand in creating.
Exactly. And it's also a great opportunity to teach them about self-regulation and responsible technology use.
Those are such important life skills.
They really are.
And the earlier we can start teaching those skills, the better. Okay, well, I think we've covered a lot of really important information today. We've talked about the risks of excessive screen time, but we've also talked about some practical strategies for mitigating those risks and helping kids develop a healthy relationship with technology.
And I think the key takeaway here is that it's all about balance.
Balance, yes.
Technology can be an amazing tool, but it's important to use it in a way that supports our kids' overall well-being.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought to ponder. We've talked a lot about individual families and what parents can do at home, but I think it's important to remember that this is also a societal issue. The digital world is only going to become more pervasive in our lives, and it's going to be up to all of us, parents, educators, policymakers, to figure out how to navigate this new landscape in a way that's healthy and beneficial for our kids.
That's a great point. It's a conversation that needs to continue.
Exactly. So as you're thinking about your own family's screen time habits, also think about the bigger picture. What can we do as a society to create a digital environment that supports kids' healthy development? That's something we all need to be thinking about.
I agree.
Thanks so much for joining us for this deep dive. We hope you found it informative and helpful. We'll see you next time.